Yes. The House of Representatives voted late on Tuesday to censure Democratic Representative Rashida Tlaib of Michigan, who is the only Palestinian American in Congress, in an almost unprecedented rebuke of her rhetoric about the Israel-Hamas war. Of course, Ms. Tlaib, who is always very opinionated, did not take this one sitting down. I think it's important that you hear what she had to say in her own defense, because she definitely laid it down, her personal view on the situation.
I'm the only Palestinian American serving in Congress, Mr. Chair, and my perspective is needed here now more than ever. I will not be silenced, and I will not let you distort my words. Folks forget I'm from the city of Detroit, the most beautiful, blackest city in the country, where I learned to speak truth to power even if my voice shakes. Trying to bully or censor me won't work, because this movement for a ceasefire is much bigger than one person. It's growing every single day. There are millions of people across our country who oppose Netanyahu's extremism and are done watching our government support collective punishment and the use of white phosphorus bombs that melt flesh to the bone. They are done watching our government, Mr. Chair, supporting cutting off food, water, electricity, and medical care to millions of people with nowhere to go. Like me, Mr. Chair, they don't believe the answer to war crimes is more war crimes. The refusal of Congress and the administration to acknowledge Palestinian lives is chipping away at my soul. Over 10,000 Palestinians have been killed. Majority were children. But let me be clear. My criticism has always been of the Israeli government and Netanyahu's actions. It is important to separate people and governments, Mr. Chair. No government is beyond criticism. The idea that criticizing the government of Israel is anti-Semitic sets a very dangerous precedent, and it's being used to silence diverse voices speaking up for human rights across our nation. Do you realize what it's like, Mr. Chair, for the people outside the chamber right now, listening in agony to their own government dehumanizing them? To hear the President of the United States we helped elect dispute death tolls as we see video after video of dead children and parents under rubble? Mr. Chair, do you know what it's like to fear rising hate crimes, to know how Islamophobia and anti-Semitism makes us all less safe, and worry that your own child might suffer the horrors that 6-year-old Wadia did in Illinois? I can't believe I have to say this, but Palestinian people are not disposable. We are human beings, just like anyone else. My Sitsi, my grandmother, like all Palestinians, just wants to live her life with freedom and human dignity we all deserve. Speaking up to save lives, Mr. Chair, no matter faith, no matter ethnicity, should not be controversial in this chamber. The cries of the Palestinian and Israeli children sound no different to me. What I don't understand is why the cries of Palestinians sound different to you all. We cannot lose our shared humanity, Mr. Chair. I hear the voices of advocates in Israel, in Palestine, across America, and around the world for peace. I am inspired by the courageous survivors in Israel who have lost loved ones, yet are calling for a ceasefire and the end to violence. I am grateful to the people in the streets for the peace movement, with countless Jewish Americans across the country standing up and lovingly saying, "Not in our name." We will continue to call for a ceasefire, Mr. Chair, for the immediate delivery of critical humanitarian aid to Gaza, for the release of all hostages and those arbitrarily detained, and for every American to come home. We will continue to work for real lasting peace that upholds human rights and dignity of all people, and centers in peaceful coexistence between Israelis and Palestinians, and censures no one, and ensures that no person, no child has to suffer or live in fear of violence. 71% of Michigan Democrats support a ceasefire. So you can try to censure me, but you can't silence their voices. I urge my colleagues to join with the majority of Americans and support a ceasefire now to save as many lives as possible. President Biden must listen to and represent all of us, not just some of us. I urge the President to have the courage to call for a ceasefire and the end of killings. Thank you, and I yield.
Yes, that was a representative from Michigan, Rashida Tlaib. She was censured by the House of Representatives in a 234 to 188 tally. That came after 22 Democrats came over to join in with the Republicans to censure a Palestinian American woman for having the nerve to speak out against the crimes and to advocate on behalf of her people who are being currently ethnically cleansed on the Gaza Strip. Now, at first, the Democrats stood with her, but last weekend helped defeat the first censure resolution. But a lot of her colleagues, including prominent Jewish members, have become more conflicted about her rhetoric around the war. So, look, as time goes on, you know, the screw, AIPAC is putting the screws to these members of Congress and demanding that, hey, you got to shut this woman up. You know, just like they did the same thing about Ilhan Omar. They tried to censure Ilhan Omar, the Somalian American woman from Minnesota, who's in the House of Representatives. You can't talk crap about Israel. They are now conflating criticism of the state of Israel with anti-Semitism, which is dangerous. That's actually what happened in this country after 9/11. If you guys remember, right after 9/11, if you criticized George Bush, it was because you loved Osama bin Laden or because you loved Saddam Hussein. And that's how we ended up in this stupid war, the war in Iraq. Remember? The Dixie chick said, hey, we're ashamed the President of the United States is from Texas, and their careers were ruined by it. Remember that? I do. That's what happens when you're not allowed to criticize the government. Now, strangely enough, here's the strange part. Actual Israeli journalists, like those at Haaretz, are actually far more critical, openly critical, of the Israeli government than American ones are. American journalists and politicians fall all over themselves to be the most pro-Israel because AIPAC has so much weight, so much power. But listen to this Israeli journalist. This is a man named Gideon Levy. He writes for Haaretz, which is Israel's version of the New York Times. He has no problem calling out Israel for being a colonial apartheid state, and he lived there. He lives there.
The Israeli society had surrounded itself with shields, with walls, not only physical walls, but also mental walls. I don't want to get into it because it's another lecture, but I'll just give the 3 principles which enable us Israelis to live so easily with this brutal reality. A, most of the Israelis, if not all of them, deeply believe that we are the chosen people. And if we are the chosen people, we have the right to do whatever we want. B, there were more brutal occupations in history. There were even longer occupations in history, even though the Israeli occupation gets to quite a nice record. But there was never in history an occupation in which the occupier presented himself as the victim. Not only the victim, the only victim around. This also enables any Israeli to live in peace because we are the victims. The other day, Professor Falk spoke about this dual strategy of Israel of being a victim on one hand and manipulating the other on the other hand, after what happened in Paris and in Copenhagen with the terror attacks, Benjamin Netanyahu came with the notion all the Jews must come to Israel. It's the safest place for the Jews in the world. It's a shelter for the Jews in the world. Which is wrong, because Israel is today the most dangerous place on earth for Jews, but let's put it aside. It was only 24 hours later when he said Israel is an existential threat under the Iranian bomb. And I asked myself, how can you dare call Jews to come and to join this suicidal project when the Iranians are going to bomb us? But in Israel, everything goes, and both declarations were accepted as the only truth. And here I get to the third set of values which enable us Israelis to live in peace with the occupation. And this is maybe the most crucial one and the worst one. We say victimization, we say it's chosen people. When I say victimization, it goes without saying we have to mention the Holocaust and the unforgettable Mrs. Golda Meir that the American jury had exported to Israel. She said once, this unforgettable woman, that after the Holocaust, the Jews have the right to do whatever they want. But the third set of values is the most dangerous one, and this is the systematic dehumanization of the Palestinians, which enable us Israelis to live in peace with everything, because if they are not human beings like us, then there is not really a question of human rights.
As you can hear, that's Gideon Levy, who is from Israel's biggest newspaper, Haaretz, letting his state, Israel, have it straight with no chaser. You are simultaneously the victim and the manipulator. Gaslighting the public, gaslighting the world. And you notice, he calls it an occupation. He calls it that. He lives there. Just like I call the United States an occupation. We live here. It is an occupation. Has anybody ever really just thought about the fact that, well, at least those of us living on this side of the border, we live in Indiana. Have you guys ever thought about that? We live in Indiana. Do you know what Indiana means? It literally means land of the Indians. Land of the Indians. But I don't see no Indians around here. Except maybe like the red dot Indians at the gas station. That's about it. That's about it. You're not going to see any TP having Indians anytime soon. You're just not in this state, even though it is the land of the Indians. How insulting. And then you look at all the things that we named after the people that were occupied in this country. Potawatomi Trail, Miami, Indian Boundary. Like, these are all streets in my neighborhood in Miller. Like, you go, what? The nerve, the absolute nerve. But why does the United States support Israel so hard? Because Israel is a colonial, imperial project, just like the United States is, just like Australia is. Just a few weeks ago, I saw a post online, and they said, did you guys know that Israel at one point had the second highest skin cancer rate in the entire world? Number two. Number one, I think, was Australia. The United States is up there too. And you put the dots together. Right. These people are Europeans. They are not indigenous to Australia. They are not indigenous to the United States. They are not indigenous to Israel. Think about that. You know who doesn't get skin cancer at that level, in spite of living in hot climates? People with melanin and Middle Easterners. People who are actually indigenous to the climate. So even Mother Nature is letting these people know, you are not indigenous. You are not the indigenous people to Israel. What are you doing? They had to have a whole campaign where they told people to stay out of the sunlight and you know, wear thicker clothing and put on sunscreen. They had to have a whole campaign to get their skin cancer rates to go down because they are not indigenous to the climate. And ironically, the only people there who probably, you know, in actual Israel, who probably aren't getting skin cancer, the African Jews, are the ones they're trying to either kick out or sterilize so that they can't reproduce. But they the ones who don't belong there. I'm not just telling you don't belong there. God's telling you that, folks. God's telling them that. And so ultimately, you're talking about an occupation, and Rashida Tlaib has unfortunately been betrayed by many in her own party. I hope you guys see why this is why I don't support the Democratic Party anymore, right? This is who the Democrats are. Representative Brad Schneider, who's a Democrat from Illinois, who voted with the Republicans to advance the censure resolution, said he believed it was important to censure the slogan "From the River to the Sea." He said it is nothing else but the call for the destruction and murder of the Jews. You have literal people in Congress saying that we should turn Gaza into a parking lot and comparing innocent women and children to Nazis. And none of those people are being censured. But she's being censured for saying "for the river to the sea" and for speaking up for a ceasefire. How is she calling for the destruction of Israel when she's calling for a ceasefire? This is what we're up against here, folks. This is what we're dealing with. Let me get this caller here. Hello, caller.
How do you do?
It's all good, sister.
Okay, question. In fact, just a statement.
Yes.
About as far as the indigenous people to that land.
The ones with melanin?
As far as the people who are indigenous to that piece of land.
Yeah, the people with melanin.
Okay, the people. I don't think that was ever a question, because even in the Holy Bible, the people who went there were not already there. They went there, so I don't think they were claiming to be indigenous.
You need to tell them Europeans there.
Okay, well, they weren't necessarily. They were those Jews who had migrated from Egypt. They had been in exile in Egypt.
No. I'm talking about the ones.
There.
I'm talking about the people now who are talking to the Europeans now who are saying that. Not them. Not the old Jews. I'm talking about the new Jews. Yes.
Oh well.
Yeah.
I will say that I kind of communicate with some certain Jewish groups, and as far that have intelligence to find out stuff. And I know for months there have been air raids, and the Palestinians, or Hamas, I should clarify, had been dropping bombs in Israel, and people were going to fallout shelters, and like kids would have to evacuate the school and go there because they have a lot of shelters there.
Yeah, they've been bombing
And
Hamas.
fortunately, and they were doing you know. And I understand the difference between Hamas and all of Palestine
No, I'm just
and all of
saying
that
they've
good
been bombing
stuff. But I'm just
Palestinians for
throwing that part in.
generations, and they created Hamas as well. That's another thing. They created Hamas and fund Hamas. That's important to
when we say
understand.
they now
Israel,
we
the
gotta
Israeli
clarify.
government, the Israeli government. I talked about it a few weeks here on the show. I brought from Haaretz, which is Israel's biggest newspaper. Again, they're much more honest about this than Americans are, who seem to like all be in the pocket of Israel. Netanyahu himself says it is best for the state of Israel that we keep funding Hamas. That's what what the prime minister said just in 2019. Okay, Hamas didn't exist. Hamas didn't exist. The only reason that Hamas this is what it is now is because the state of Israel propped it up, because the Palestinian Authority and the Palestinian Liberation Organization, which had Yasser Arafat, who won a Nobel Peace Prize, if you can remember, they were too popular. That, again, Arafat won a peace prize, and Israel saw that more and more people around the world were calling for a two-state solution, and so Israel did what we always do in this country, which was they propped up the most radical, rabid people specifically for the purpose of causing chaos. The purpose was to split the Palestinian people and to provide a boogeyman, a Islamic boogeyman, so that the public would stop advocating for a two-state solution. And it has backfired on them. And this is what happened on October 7th. It backfired on them. I
think what I really regret is that in the actual state of Israel, people get along. The people who are Muslims get along, who actually reside there in peace, get along with the Jews and whomever else resides there in peace.
Well, I mean, they don't have the same rights. They don't have all the same rights. They can serve in Congress, but they don't have the same rights as Jews. Like, the whole purpose of Israel now is to turn into a ethno-state. That's what with Israel is now, an ethno-state where all the European Jews have all the rights. And you see, like I said, they're actually sterilizing the Ethiopian Jews, the African Jews. They're sterilizing them. And saying that
sterilizing them?
Yes, look it up, Google it. This has been,
because I know. In fact, I know a group that just a few months back got some more plane loads of Jews from Ethiopia, or some of us, to come funding their trip back.
Yeah, they've been sterilizing them for years. Israel has admitted. This is from Haaretz again. again, you gotta go to Israel's own newspaper, unfortunately, because in this one, our media is owned by a few billionaires and corporations who are in the pockets of, of big money, basically. Like, they are admitting that they, against the will, they gave these Ethiopian women birth control shots so that they couldn't give birth. Thousands of women were given shots of Depo-Provera every 3 months without their consent. So this is what Israel themselves are admitting to.
Question: that information that you're quoting, do you have it on your page or anything like that?
Like I said, it's at Haaretz, Haaretz. Like I said, it's Israel's biggest newspaper.
It's like their publication.
Yeah, it's their version of the New York Times.
Okay.
It's called the name of the article is Israel Admits Ethiopian Women Were Given Birth Control. That's what
Thank you.
All right. Thank you for your call.
I appreciate it.
It's all good. But yeah, like, again, you got to go to Haaretz. Haaretz is far more honest and upfront about what Israel's doing to not just Ethiopians but Palestinians than you're going to get on channel 257, 932. CNN, MSNBC, especially Fox News, because again, you have people in our government who are owned by Israel. People like Hakeem Jeffries, who is the Speaker of the House, who has the nerve to call Jerusalem, what do you call it? Jerusalem the sixth borough of New York City, people like Bakari Sellers, all these Uncle Toms, you know, in the corporate liberal Democratic Party, who advocate for the, like I said, ethno-state. It is an ethno-state. That's what they are fighting for. They are fighting to finish pushing the rest of the Palestinian people out, finish what the Nakba could not in 1947, and they now are currently occupying the Gaza Strip, you know, which was one of the last remnants. They are building illegal settlements all over the West Bank. Show you how they tried to make this about Hamas. The West Bank is separated from the Gaza Strip, so Hamas has nothing to do with the West Bank, which is where the other Palestinians live. But they killing Palestinians all in the West Bank too, where there is no Hamas. There's no Hamas in the West Bank. They have the Palestinian Authority, which was propped up by the United States, propped up by Israel as well, to be sort of a softer, a kindler, gentler sort of alternative. And so now they just arrested one of maybe the most famous Palestinian activist in the world. Currently, her name is Aheg Tamimi. I don't know if you guys have seen this young girl. She was like 10 years old, who was standing up to Israeli soldiers when she was 10 years old. And she's like, you know, she looks like a little girl, and she's like fighting back against these soldiers who are brutalizing her family and her people. They just arrested her the other day. You know, she's like 22 now or something. But those are the West Bank people. Those aren't even Hamas. Israel's building illegal settlements that have been condemned by the United Nations, by virtually every country in the world in the West Bank. Nothing to do with Hamas. Nothing. And they still doing it because the whole plan was to create an ethno-state, a Jewish ethno-state where only Jews have rights. And now in our Congress, you actually had a Republican, I believe he was a Republican. I want to make sure he was a Republican, show up in Congress wearing a Jewish or Israeli military uniform. He's an American, and he's wearing a Israeli military uniform. Israeli military uniform in Congress. Could you imagine if somebody showed up in Congress wearing any other country's military uniform? I don't even think the dude is Jewish. I don't even think he is Jewish. Just a right-wing psycho. Let me get this call. Hello, caller.
How's it going, Scott?
What's up, brother?
Yeah, you know, hey, listen, this is what I want to ask you. Remember I told you about 2 months ago about that Aldersville paper, man? Seems like you're taking some pages out of that, man. I got to come in like hacksaw.
Haaretz is Israel's biggest newspaper.
I know what it is.
Okay.
I'm telling you, I'm got to come in there like Jim Duggan. I got to come in there regulating, buddy. You know.
Hey, Dr. Williams will be here in a few to do so.
What'd you say?
I said Dr. Williams will be here at 8 o'clock to do so as well.
Now, yeah, I'm coming in early to regulate. Listen, let me tell you something, son. Let me tell you something. Now, listen.
Yes.
I done heard you, you know, you said quite a bit.
Yes,
but let me tell you this, man. Let me ask you, you got a sister, right?
I do.
You got a mother, right?
I do.
You got a grandmother, right?
I do as well.
Okay, now tell me this. Now, if you were standing there, young man, say of your stature right now, but let's roll you back about 20 years or so, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, you're a young man, and you seeing a man assaulting your mother and your grandmother right in front of your eyes. Now, think of that snapshot. Now, let's look at it. If you know what I mean, I'm not going to go into the details. I'm not going to go off. Okay, I'm not going to go off into the cat litter box. If you don't start none, it won't be none, but it's in the cat litter box.
Yes.
Okay, listen, now let me ask you this now. If you see your brother, now let's roll it back. If your brother seen you the way, back, let's roll it back 20 years ago, and he seen somebody assaulting you right in front of his eyes now. And I think this is a snapshot. This is a Polaroid. Bam! He's seeing you being assaulted. And you know which way I'm talking about, all right?
Okay.
All right, now you think of that. Now you go back to that and you try to make sense out of that because you said it's bombs being dropped and this and that. But like you always say, and this is a street term, if you don't start none, it won't be none. Now listen to this right here. Now just listen. Now this is the definition of a coward. Anytime you go and put women, folks, and children in front of you to shield you, they put all they base around the hospitals and around the schools. Who does that? When you're a soldier, you put on a uniform. You put on a uniform so that they'll know who you are. You don't get inside of the community and act like you a
the IDF in the past few years has had over 15,000 allegations of sexual assault. Like nobody sexually assaults more people than the Israeli Defense Forces.
Can you prove that? That's that's Alizé again.
That's their own reporting.
Okay,
that's their own reporting.
No.
The complaints have been made. The complaints have been made. Like I said, the complaints have been made. We have the videos of them assaulting grandmothers, of them assaulting children. I just talked about Ahmed Tamimi. We can see Ahmed Tamimi being assaulted by Israeli soldiers when she's 12 and 13 years old. How's the Palestinian supposed to?
It's hard. Go and see that.
You can find it all over. You can find it all over anywhere on the internet. Just look up Ahmed Tamimi Israeli soldiers, and you will see Israeli soldiers manhandling her when she's 10 years old, 12 years old, everything else, and all the other Palestinian grandmothers and mamas and everything else. There's video of all this if you're looking for it. Okay.
And I've been out a long time. I ain't talking about. They had some young girls that they chopped off their head and put them in naked bodies. Look,
and Israel's been bombing and killing women and children for 70 years.
Okay, tell me this then. If this is wrong, there's 72,000 people that died of drug overdoses. Now you tell me that that's just drug overdoses. We ain't talking about the street murders that took place with the fentanyl and the heroin and the cocaine being sold right here in this country. We're in our own war, okay? There's terrorists. Now, we got homeland terrorists right here, okay? Right. Now, tell me this. Have you had any tamales or seafood soup? I mean, how many migrant families how many people have you taken in? How many?
I don't support bringing in mass. I don't support mass immigration. It doesn't benefit the working class.
No, it don't. But at the same time, I hear all the time that we got to open our hearts up and be this big-hearted.
You don't hear that from me.
Well, no, I haven't heard it from you. The community here needs help. But I want to get back to Hamas. Hamas is a terrorist group, man. So when you go and say Israel, now listen,
Israel are terrorists as well.
Anytime they say from the rivers to the sea, we will be free.
Yes.
That's a chant that they say. Now, that chant is to annihilate them, destroy them. I don't want to hear that. See,
they talk about turning Gaza into a parking lot. Again, in the Congress, you have Republicans saying they're going to turn Gaza into a parking lot.
You know what a cast iron skillet is, right?
What'd you say?
You know what a black cast iron skillet is,
yes,
right?
Yes, I do. Yes.
Well, this is what you do. When it snows, you go get some snow and make a snowball and cook a snowball on a black cast iron skillet. That's just like trying to put Bernie in to be, when you said you wanted to put Bernie in to be president.
I didn't vote for him. So I voted third party. I voted third party.
Okay, well, that's just like that. That's the same thing when you vote third party. That's just like taking a snowball and put it in a cast iron skillet, okay? It makes no sense, okay? So when we surround the wagons and we say we're going to vote for a third party, we're going to do this. See, I'm not off into the politic parts right now. I'm off into 72 100,000 American citizens had died from fentanyl and heroin overdose.
Yes, they
okay?
have. Yeah,
so
we talk about that a lot here.
War right here, okay?
I
agree. And Hamas and the Palestinians are running a murderous campaign against the Jewish people. When that man got hit in the head with a megaphone, that was your granddaddy going down at 69 years old.
And what about the 6-year-old kid who was stabbed for being a Palestinian right there in Chicago?
That was just a wild white man.
No, that's just a wild white man.
No,
that was a wild white man.
That hit that man in the head, though. That was a Palestinian.
That was
okay.
And the kid was murdered because he was a Palestinian. The 6-year-old kid right there in Chicago. Jews are white. Those Jews are white. Those Jews are white Europeans.
Jews
are Jews. They white. They're white. That's why they got such high rates of skin cancer. We just talked about this. All right,
you're
brother.
Black, but you're not a Jamaican.
Thank you for your call. I got to go to a break.
You're
it's
not
all
a
good.
Jamaican.
I am not, but I still don't got skin cancer. Thank you for your call. When we come back. Oh, wait. Let me just say this. Joe Biden is not doing very well with the with the Arab people. His party censuring Rashida Tlaib will not help matters. And so when we get back, we're going to get into Joe Biden's no good, very bad week right here on Issues and Answers. My Country with Scott Cannon. We'll be right back after these.